I'm not a super religious person or anything, but I felt like this is like some sign from, I lost my only sister, and then all of a sudden I have this half sister.
Hello, you are listening to NPE Stories. This is a podcast where NPEs can share their story. I am your host, Lily, and I found out I was an NPE through an ancestry DNA test that changed my life forever. NPE is a term that stands for Not Parent Expected or Non-Paternal Event. This means that one or more of our parents are not who we believe them to be. NPE Stories is a podcast where NPEs can share their story of what their original family was like, how they found out they were an NPE, and what their journey has been like since the day they found out. Welcome to episode 225, and thank you so much to those of you that are Patreon supporters of this podcast. I really appreciate you. I am actually looking for someone who would be interested in volunteering their graphic design expertise. I would like to update the NPE Stories logo, and I don't have the funds to do that. So if anyone listening would like to volunteer their time, perhaps they're talented with Adobe Illustrator, please contact me. I would love an updated logo. You can email npestories@gmail.com. And today we are going to get into an NPE story. Today I am speaking with Gina H. Hi, Gina.
Hi.
We are local. We're both Minnesotans.
I know, it's great. It's been great weather.
We are so lucky for October. I can't believe it.
Yes.
I was thinking, gosh, it would be so nice if I had a podcast studio with 2 mics. We could have actually met in person today.
That would have been awesome.
I know. One day, though, right? One day.
Yes.
Have you ever been to any of the local NPE meetups?
I actually had a couple. I had met some people at some coffee bars that I organized. So
No way. I think I heard about those. You were the organizer?
I was. One lady did it first, and then we never saw her again. So we don't know what happened there. But the next 2 I organized. So it's been a while, but yeah, it was great.
Thank you for doing that. All it takes is just one motivated individual to put the announcement out there and say, let's meet up.
Yeah, it was wonderful. I met some lovely ladies. So
Oh my gosh, I wonder. So I bet we know some of the same local NPEs. That's great.
yes.
Where did you meet, just out of curiosity?
Oh, the one time was in Hopkins
Mm-hmm.
at the coffee place there. I can't think of the name.
Yeah, Monka Beans?
Monka Beans.
Was
That
that?
was it.
No way. I've been going there
Yes.
since I was a teenager. Oh, I love that.
And then we went to like the Copper Pint one time. And the first one that other lady organized was somewhere in Bloomington at a coffee shop on France. I can't remember that name either, but
Thank you for doing that. I'm just going to put that out there again. So if you are on perhaps like a Facebook forum, there's many different NPE groups. You can make announcements or join the sub-regional group for your state and set up your own meetup, just like Gina did. I think it's so nice just to meet in person and talk about these things.
it really helps to talk about people that are going through it. So
let's get your story today. We're going to start at the beginning. Why don't you tell me who was in your raising family and a little bit about your childhood?
sure. I grew up in a small town in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan with my mom and dad. And I had one sister who was 18 years older than me. And I had a great childhood, wonderful parents, loving, fun. Everything was just perfect. The only thing that made me feel a little bit different was probably the fact that my parents were older. My mom was in her early 40s when she had me, and my dad was 45. And then, of course, I had the sister that was older, and there was none in between. So that always made me feel a little different. But other than that, my childhood was great. My sister got married when I was 3, so she moved to Wisconsin then. But even though we were that far apart in age, we were still real close, I think, because it was just the two of us. And unfortunately, she passed away from pancreatic cancer the year before I found out about my NPE situation.
Oh gosh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so that was rough, but yeah, my childhood was great. It was a wonderful place to grow up.
I am assuming somebody brought this up in your childhood, but what was the reason you were told for the big age gap between you and your sister?
My sister actually was the one that she was a storyteller, so she told the stories all the time, when you were born, when mom found out she was pregnant, just all the things that happened in the 18 years that I wasn't there that she was. But she had said that my mom wanted to have more children after she had her, and she never could get pregnant. And so the doctor told her she probably wouldn't ever get pregnant. So there was that.
Uh-huh. So you were like
Hmm.
the surprise
Big
blessing.
surprise, apparently, but more of a
Yeah.
surprise than I thought.
So in your childhood, did you have any indications that you were an NPE?
I didn't have any at all. I would have never thought in a million years. My dad adored me and I adored him. He was the kindest, sweetest man. Nobody could say a bad thing about him. All my friends loved him. Yeah, it was wonderful. So, total shocker.
Wow. Now, how did you find out you were an NPE?
Well, let's see, 2023, I was helping my granddaughter was 9 and she had to do an ancestry project and she picked my dad's parents. And both sets of my grandparents had come over from Italy. So we were, giving her a bunch of information about that. I had a cousin on my dad's side that was very knowledgeable in all of it. So she was helping us with it. She even knew the name of the boat they came over on. So we were having a lot of fun finding all this out. And my daughter, I have two daughters. My youngest daughter decided to get me an ancestry test for my birthday that year because we really enjoyed finding out all this heritage. So I got the test and I sent it in and I got the results back and I opened it up. And like I said before, both sets of my grandparents came from Italy. So I always said I was 100% Italian and grew up in kind of an Italian community in the town I was in. And I opened it up, and my results were half Italian and half Scandinavian. So that was a shocker. And at first, when I looked at the results, I thought, well, my mom has blue eyes and she always had lighter skin. And they had said because they were from northern Italy, but I thought maybe they had it wrong. Maybe she was Scandinavian. Then I started matching up. I could see my cousins that had taken the test and they were matching up with me on my mother's side, which was the Italian side. So I was shocked and I told my daughters right away and they were shocked. And at first I just said, I think I'm the milkman's daughter. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And I'm real close to my nieces and nephews. They're closer to age in me than, I have a nephew 3 years younger, a niece 6 years younger, and told them, and they were all shocked. And I didn't know what to think. I remember not thinking about, oh my gosh, who is my dad? I was thinking about, oh my gosh, who knew this? Because I couldn't believe that this happened and that I didn't know. I mean, I was 64 years old at the time when I found out. So I was on a mission. and I asked everybody I knew. So I wasn't one of those people that kept it to myself. I told everybody. And I asked childhood friends, and they, of course, were all shocked too. I had one friend tell me she cried for 2 days about it because, I mean, they all just loved my dad, and they had no clue. I asked my relatives. My parents were actually the youngest in their families as well. So even though my parents were older, they had, many older siblings. So a lot of my cousins were 20 some years older than me. And I still have a cousin who's 91. So I talked to her and she had no idea. It was pretty much everybody from my mother's side of the family. Everybody was shocked. Nobody had ever heard anything. And then my mom hung out with a group of girlfriends, and I know two of their daughters because everybody has passed. So there's nobody you could ask. You're just trying to get this secondhand information. So I asked the two daughters if they had ever heard anything, and they said no, and they were shocked. Farther months down the line, it was actually the one cousin who had helped us with that ancestry test for my granddaughter. She's about 12 years older than me, and she remembers her parents talking about my mom had had an affair and that my dad was, upset, and they were fighting about it. And I found out then that my dad's side of the family, he had three brothers, and they all knew. And whether this was, the affair where I was that brought me about, or I don't know, but she just remembered them talking about that, and they knew. And I also talked to my cousin's second wife. My cousin has passed away as well, and this was his second wife on my dad's side, and she said the same thing, like that he had said, yeah, that they didn't think that I was my dad's child. So after all that, I decided to take another test because you always think the test might be wrong, even though it never is. So I then went and took 23andMe. Sent that in July. Waited till July, waited till a sale. And when I got the results back from that, I opened it up. Same results, of course. And I just shut it and didn't really look at it. About 2 weeks later, I opened it up and I looked at the matches. And the first thing that came up was a half sister. So I was shocked again, texted my girls. They were shocked. I told her the name, and one of them looked her up on Facebook and sent me the picture, and it was just wild because there was a resemblance. I have green eyes. Nobody in my family has green eyes. She had green eyes. I messaged her pretty quick and right on 23andMe, and she messaged me back, and I was just saying, did you see this? And we were both shocked, and she said, it must mean that my dad's your dad, and we had some conversation back and forth. And then the next morning, I got a wonderful message from her, and she said she thought about me all night, and she knows this must be so shocking for me, and she wanted to be there for me. And she told me that she was estranged from her siblings. She had four other siblings, which was kind of a red flag to me. Ever since her mom died in 2013, she's been estranged from them, but she said she could use a good sister. So we messaged back and forth. It felt like I knew her forever, and she felt the same way. She wanted to talk in a few days. So we talked on the phone. We just hit it off. It was wonderful. And she told me stories upon stories of her family. She asked me if I had a loving father, and I said, yeah, he was the best. He was just the greatest. And I told her about him. And then she told me about her dad, and she said she had a bit of a tumultuous growing up years. And then a couple days later, we talked on the phone again, and we probably talked for almost 3 hours.
Wow.
And we were both having a couple glasses of wine. And she, at the end of the conversation, she said, "Can I tell you something?" And I said, "Sure." And she said, "I love you." I didn't say anything at first. And then she goes, "Too soon?" And she started laughing because, I hadn't said anything. And so I was laughing too. And I said, "You have to love me. I'm your sister." And so anytime we talked on the phone after that, we'd always say, "Love you, love you." And my sister that passed away from cancer, when her and I used to talk on the phone, that's how we always ended our conversations. I'm not a super religious person or anything, but I felt like this is like some sign from, I lost my only sister, and then all of a sudden I have this half sister. So it was wonderful. And she wanted me to come out. She lives in Arizona, grew up in Michigan. So not in the same town as me, though, like 2 hours away. So put a pin in that one. But she lived in Arizona, had lived there over 40 years. So she wanted me to come out and visit her. And we both had weddings that fall. My daughter was getting married, and a family friend of hers was getting married. So I said, let's just do it after the holidays because I can't really get away. So, right in January, I went out to see her, and I stayed with a cousin for a few days. I have a cousin that winters out there. And then the rest of the time, I stayed with my half sister, and we had a great time. Oh, and I'm going to backtrack because in December of that year, she decided she was going to take an ancestry test because she had only taken 23andMe. And when she got her results back from her ancestry test, her oldest brother was coming in. He's the only one in her family that had taken it besides her. And he was coming in as a half brother to her. And he was not coming up on my ancestry at all.
Hmm.
So she said, "Oh my gosh, he must have a different dad." And I said, "Yeah, I'm not even a half brother to him." And also before that, even though she was estranged from her siblings, she wanted me to have a relationship with them. She didn't want, if I wanted to meet them, she wanted me to be able to. And so I did get a hold of her sister, and we talked a few times on the phone and texted, and she was very nice as well. So when she found out this about her brother coming in as just a half brother, she told me, "You're going to have to tell my sister because she doesn't speak to her." so
Yeah.
so I told her, and the half sister that I told that to was very surprised because she said, "Oh my gosh, my brother looks just like my dad, and he looks like my other brother." So
Hmm.
that kind of put up a little red flag again. So I was like, okay. So anyway, then back to when I was going out there and I had the greatest time. She was a wonderful hostess. She took me everywhere, sightseeing. We did all the fun things. We both get up at the crack of dawn, and we would sit there and do our Wordle and chit chat. And it was just such a comfortable situation. And she brought out a bunch of pictures. We looked at pictures. We talked about things. She told me, so many stories. And then the last day that I was there, we decided to get on our ancestry and see what matches we had because she couldn't recognize any of the people that were on her dad's side. And she said, "Well, we were a private family and didn't have a lot of cousins or something." So I'm like, okay. But I didn't. So we sat down with a pen and paper. I didn't realize that you could click on something and it would show your shared matches back then. I don't even think you had to pay for it back then. You do now. But we just went through the list. You got that one? Yes. You got that one? Yes. And made this little list. And when I got home, I kept asking her a few questions like, "What's your grandma's name?" Or it was weird to me that she didn't know anybody on the dad's side. And also the fact that her brother was coming in as a half brother. And I had mentioned to her, what if your half brother is your dad's son and we're the ones with a different dad? And she said, "You read too many novels." And so When I got home, took my list, and the top 5 people, the closest matches, I messaged to see if they knew how we were related, and I didn't hear back from any except one, and she was a first cousin once removed, so like a second cousin, I guess that's how they word it. And she messaged me back and said, "No, I don't think I'm related to any of them." And then she gave me a list and said, "Here's the people that I'm related to." And she had about 6 people on the list. So I told my half sister, or I asked her, do you know any of these names? Does this ring a bell?" And she said no. And it was at that time that I thought something's not right. I just had a feeling, and I had heard about the DNA angels from a book that I had read. I'll actually give you the name of that. It was called The Unearthing by Kyo McClear. And I heard about that book just on a random day. I was flipping through a People magazine, and it gave a little report on it and said it was about a woman that found out her dad wasn't her dad. And I was like, well, that was appropriate. So
Hmm.
I read it. And in the book, she told about the DNA angels and also about the private Facebook groups, the NPE groups on Facebook as well. So that's how I found out about the DNA angels. And I got a hold of them and told them my story. And they matched me up with one. And Kim, her name was, and she found out probably within 24 hours, maybe even quicker. We texted back and forth. She had some questions for me, and the next thing I knew, she had, gave me a report, and she said that my half sister's dad was not my dad, and it was not her dad either, obviously, because we're still half sisters, but that this other gentleman was my dad. And
Oh.
so I sat on the results. I mean, it was the third dad in 6 months because, I grew up, thought the dad I grew up with was my dad. Nope. Then I thought this other man who my half sister grew up with was my dad. Nope. And now it's this other man who did not live in the same town either. He lived in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan as well, but like 2 hours away. So real, real crazy. So I was shocked. And I sat on the information. I couldn't even tell my husband. I remember I sat there I was in shock. I didn't know what I thought that the angel was going to find out because I did feel like something wasn't right, but I guess I never thought that it was going to be this totally different person. So, and then I knew I had to tell my half sister. The next morning when I woke up, I texted her and told her that the angel had found some shocking information. And did she want me to call her, or did she want me to just put it in the text? And now, hindsight being 2020, if I had the chance to do it over again, I would do it different. I think I was in shock, and I was real worried about how she was going to feel about this, obviously, because I'm the one telling her dad she grew up with is not her dad. She had a pretty traumatic life anyway, and I knew it wasn't going to be good, and it wasn't. So I pretty much just copy and pasted what the angel told me and put it in her text, and she did not take it well. We messaged back and forth that day a bit about different things. And, I had told her what I found out about the man, and she was not interested. She called him a sperm donor. I don't care. It was not good. And then the next day, I called her, or no, I texted her in the morning and I said, "Do you want to chat?" And she always wanted to talk on the phone. She was a definite phone talker. And she said, "No, I just can't." And I knew then that things were not going to be the same. We had a few texts back and forth, and then I went on to the Facebook groups and kind of told them what was going on, and they said, "Give her time, she's just tell her you're there for her and give her time." And so I did. I told her, I care about you and take all the time you need. And she was pretty quiet with her texts. And a couple of them that I got back were they were just kind of blunt. And I don't know, I just wasn't feeling great about them. And then 2 weeks later, she sent me a text and said that she didn't want me to think that she was shutting me out. And it was also the week of my sister's birthday, the one that had passed away, and she remembered that. And she said, "I know it's Julie's birthday coming up, and I didn't want you to be sad. So," and she said, "Maybe we can chat in a few weeks." So I was like, "Okay, good. This is sounding good." And a couple weeks passed. I still didn't hear from her, so I texted her and said, "Do you want to chat?" And she told me she was composing an email. So a few days later, I got an email and it was pretty brutal. And she pretty much told me she didn't want to have a relationship with me. And the only reason she did is because she thought I was, part of her family that she grew up in. And she called me selfish and inconsiderate. And she was mad that I told her siblings when she was the one who told me to tell her siblings. And it just went on and on. And it was rough.
Oh.
I got the email and I was telling my husband about it. I was trying to read it to him and I was just sobbing. So it was rough. And she just, she said, "Good luck. I wish you well. But I have to say, my journey with you is done." And she unfriended me from Facebook and blocked me. And um, I haven't heard from her since. And that was February 22nd, 2024, I think.
Oh.
And I've reached out a few times, probably 3 times since then. And especially the last one, it almost a year later. And I sent her a card and I did apologize for telling her the way I told her and, told her I didn't mean to hurt her. But I don't think I'll ever hear from her again. And the only thing that makes me feel somewhat better is that she's estranged from her siblings for,
Mhm.
over 10 years, 11, 12, whatever it is now. So she only knew me for 6 months. I'm sure it was just easy for her to let me go. And, she said, "This is why I don't let people into my life." So there's obviously some issues there. And I have to tell myself that, maybe it doesn't matter what I did. I can't fix that. So that was that part of the story.
That's so painful to lose another sister.
Yeah, and it was literally 6 months after it
Oh
was it
my
was real.
gosh.
It was awful. And I thought about her every day for just months and months for sure. But in the meantime, my bio dad had 3 children, and I reached out to the one that was on Facebook. She's 5 years younger than me, and I reached out to her and of course had to send the message of, "I took a test and your dad is my dad." I mean, that's a crazy one to get too. And I told her there was a much longer story to that because I didn't want to tell her the whole story of my half sister in Arizona or her, whatever, because that sounded crazy. So she messaged me back right away and she said I would love to hear the whole story. So I had to put that whole thing out there. And she said, "Wow, that was a story." And she wanted to take a DNA test, which I was like, "Yeah, I'm sure you do, because this is just some stranger telling you this." So that was in 2024, I think, January. And then she had wintered away. She had just retired. So she wasn't going to be back home until May. So she waited till May. I told her, "Oh, there's a $39 sale. You better do it now." And so she got her results, and of course, was a half sister to me and to the Arizona one. she was a little, it took her a while. She was a little upset at first, and her oldest sister was not accepting it at all. And it took her a while before she told the brother and then the other sister that she had taken the test and was a half sister. But we had we would text back and forth, and we're starting to have a relationship. Let's see, she got her results like in June, and we met in July. And this was a year ago, July. I met them at a restaurant, her and my cousin, and it was great. They were wonderful, fabulous, brought pictures and just really comfortable. And and then probably a month after that, the brother, he doesn't text or anything. He's older. I think he's 71 now. And he called me and he wanted to welcome me to the family. So that was really, really
Oh,
sweet. The other sister was not ready. And so we've had a relationship along the way. And then last February, my half sister had to come. She had to go to Mayo. So her and the cousin came to my house and spent a couple days. And that was just wonderful. And we had a great time. And I got to introduce them to my whole family and my kids' families. And so that was wonderful. And then, or no, it was in August. My niece and I like to go and spend some time in Michigan at the hometown that I grew up in. And then we decided to go see my half sister and half brother as well. And right before we planned that, my half sister said, "Bring your bathing suit because we're going to be going to the other half sister's house for dinner." And I was shocked because I hadn't had any inkling that she was finally okay with this or ready to meet. Or so anyway, that was exciting. And so we went up to Michigan and stayed with my one half sister and went and I met the other one finally, and her and her husband, they were wonderful. It was like we've known each other forever. She made a lovely dinner. We had a pontoon ride. I remember sitting out on the deck and we took a picture of the four siblings. And I just remember sitting there, just being so filled with gratitude that, like, I can't believe this is happening. And then at the same time thinking, how weird is this? Because you're at like strangers' houses, but now they're your family. And so that was funny. It was a great trip. So I had that the one night. The next morning, my half sister and half brother made me a special breakfast that their dad used to make. It was the Swedish pancakes and sausage that they would have like for Christmas or on special occasions. And that was really sweet, and brought over pictures. And then the following day, more family came over, and I was meeting, kids and grandkids, and they all had came over for dinner. And so it was really nice and welcoming. I'm just really thankful that I have some siblings again. So that was great. The fact that we were all in different cities, we all grew up in different cities, and it's like, how did this happen, right?
yeah.
So I found out that my bio dad was the beer distributor for the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and for northern Wisconsin. So he would travel from city to city. And I think my half brother said he'd be gone for 6 weeks at a time sometimes. So come to
Oh,
pass, he was with my Arizona half sister's mother. And then 3 years later, he was with my mother. And then we're not sure who
wow.
else, but,
Yeah.
and his kids, I mean, they never knew anything. My parents were married until the day they died. He and his wife were married, same thing. And I was happy, just to find out your medical information is such a plus, because my poor dad that I grew up with, he had Alzheimer's. And so to see him go through that, and, he didn't know who I was, who anybody was in the end. And it was just so heart wrenching. And I was always afraid because it's, in my family that I was going to end up with that. And then come to find out, you know, he wasn't my bio dad. It's just wild. And I just think about how many people are walking around with the wrong medical information.
Yeah. Yes. That's great that the siblings are able to give you that information. And isn't that interesting how sometimes things start slow with some of the siblings? You're not sure if they're going to welcome you. And then how long do you think it was? Like a few months or half a year until.
For the
Mm,
oldest sibling, I feel like it was over a year. So I was kind
yeah.
of, I didn't think that was going to happen. And I was okay. I'm like, okay, I got two that want to know me and two that are
Mm.
like, yeah, I don't know.
Yep.
But yeah, so it was a big surprise and it was a wonderful surprise. So
Yeah, that really is. I'm still kind of waiting around years later. Like you never know. Someone might respond and come around and
there's so much rejection in this. And, some people's stories are so many sad ones. So yeah, I'm just thankful that, and even for the one that went bad, when it was good, it was wonderful. So, you know,
yeah. And I feel so bad about that. And that I wanted to go back to your first half sister revelation because you were just finding out you were an NPE and now you're matching with someone unknowingly also an NPE. That must have really confused the data, that
right.
that I never thought about that. If you match with a half sibling, you just assume, oh, it's their dad.
Of course. And
But
and I was all in. So, I'm finding out everything about this family and everything about this man, and you're just all in. And then it's like, wait, no, it's not. And oh, yeah, it was not.
oh, that is so okay. So that was really DNA angels that helped to, I mean, you kind of suspected it, but they were the ones to confirm who your bio
Right.
dad
I
was.
just knew something was wrong, but I never would have been. I don't even, the way they figure it out is wild. It's just
It's
wild.
amazing. It's amazing. They are so I'm going to put a link for DNA Angels and the book you put in there. They're able to look at the centimorgans and they can triangulate people's relationships. Yeah, they're
Oh,
thank you for the
yeah,
service they do and for free for biological
for
fathers.
free. And then the first thing that Kim said to me was, and this would have been Chris or my half sister's dad. I almost said it. She looked at his mom, and his mom was Polish, and she's like, and I remember getting that, thinking, okay, and then she said, you don't have any Polish, in you or whatever. And I was just like, okay, wait, okay. And I remember my Arizona half sister used to say, my dad always told us we were Polish. And, she didn't have any either. So,
Oh.
yeah. So, she started out with that family and then it just whoop, went off track to this other one. So,
Now, what have you found? You've mentioned some great resources. Now, what have you found healing for dealing with this for this whole process? I think you mentioned even talking about it online.
yeah, well, for sure, listening to podcasts like yours and, all the podcasts, because it seems like no matter what, they can be totally different. There's always something that seems similar, and you just realize, oh my gosh, somebody else is going through this.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Facebook private Facebook groups, and I did get asked to help moderate one of them. So I do that like once every 2 months, just,
Yeah.
accept people and whatever, and just that's the way I'm giving back, I guess.
Yeah, thank you for doing that. That's hard work to be those moderators. So thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Gina, so much for coming on explaining this. Now I understand how you were describing double NPE. I'm like, oh yeah, there's two NPEs in this story.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
if people had questions directly for you, could they reach out to you?
Yes, for sure. You can send me an email at gmh pkr@aol.com. Yes, I still have an AOL
I love it.
email.
We love you for that, Gina. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and sharing where you're at today. I really appreciate, and I appreciate you being part of this community.
Thank you for having me. And thank you for all you do.
These stories are here for us to identify with. If you are an NPE and would like to share your story, email npestories@gmail.com. You do not have to give any identifying information. If you are an NPE and would like to share your story, I'd like to hear from you. Subscribe to this podcast to hear more. Come heal with us.